So thanks for joining us today's webinar on picture symbols. My name is Laura Parks, and I am an assistive technology specialist with Tasc, that is Technology Assistance for Special Consumers. We're a nonprofit program of UCP Huntsville, and we provide statewide assistive technology services, including trainings like we're doing today. We have our online resources for our lending library at al.atforall.com. And we also do some assistive technology consultations and evaluations. We also work closely with STAR, that is the State of Alabama Assistive Technology Resource. We contract with them to provide assistive technology services through trainings, as well as we also help with their reutilization program called Waste Not and up in Huntsville, although there are other centers throughout the state. And we also do demo and loan using the al.atforall website. So this training is available for ASHA CEs. It is available for .1 ASHA CE at the professional introductory level. And my name is Laura Parks. And for disclosure reasons, I do have a relevant financial relationship. I'm an employee of Tasc who contracts with STAR to provide trainings. And I have no relevant non-financial relationships to disclose at this time. As far as content, this webinar primarily focuses on picture symbols and various ways to create them. We will be talking about some specific software programs as well as some specific websites, but there is a wide variety, and really want to encourage you throughout this training that it's not about what software you use or what website you use. It's about really implementing and utilizing picture symbols. A little bit of background about myself. I have a degree in special education, and I was fortunate enough in college to get the opportunity to do a Camp Royal in North Carolina that helped individuals with autism have a great week of summer camp. And that's really where I really became passionate about picture symbols, because they utilize the teach method, and we use picture symbols to really help with keeping the campers on task and getting their activities. So ever since then, I've been passionate about picture symbols and really utilizing them. So hopefully after today's training, if you haven't been using picture symbols, you'll learn the value of using them, then you'll begin to implement them, as well as also sharing them with parents and helping encourage them to utilize them as well. Okay. So today's presentation, we're going to talk about different types of pictures, the purposes of pictures, how to organize your pictures, some physical aspects of the pictures, because I get that question a lot of times. We're going to talk about the role of the communicator when using picture symbols, and equally important, the role of the listener or the facilitator. And finally, we're going to talk about creating picture symbols. So let's start with a little bit overview of the type of pictures. Now, I know it seems weird to say that an object is a type of picture, but it is one way that we can use, instead of pictures, is we can actually use objects to represent things. So as you can see up here in the top of the page, I have an object. It would be a glass of orange juice. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have the glass full if I was using the object to represent drink, but I may provide the student with a plastic cup or a straw to teach them that it's time to get a drink. The problem with objects is they're very bulky, so if you had an object for the entire day, you would need a big bag to carry everything around. Again, you're also looking at, well, what object would represent it? So if I was trying to teach a student a bath, then I might hand them a washcloth, and that would be a pretty easy representation. But what if I'm working on toileting? Would I hand them toilet paper? Would I hand them a pair of underwear? Would I hand them a toilet seat? It's just kind of hard to think about the object that I'm going to use to represent the task that I'm using the picture symbol or the object to facilitate. Some people will use miniature objects such as dollhouse furnitures, and that is an excellent thinking. So it provides kind of a three-dimensional, very tactile representation of an object to help encourage them to understand where you're transitioning to or communication. Another type of print is environmental print. This is something we encourage a lot of times for families. If a child has a favorite snack or a favorite drink, just peel the label off, cut out a piece of the box, and use that as the picture symbol. And they could provide that as a request that I want this. Or if they have a favorite DVD, you could take all the DVD covers out and cut out the pictures and let them have a book to look at. The nice thing about environmental print, it's pretty easy to make since it's free. You can just cut it off the box. And it does provide a really good visual for an individual to understand what you're requesting. Another type of pictures is real photographs. As you can see on my screen, I've got a photograph of 2 drinks. Well, photographs can be great because they're very realistic. But sometimes for students that are using real photographs, they cue in on the wrong thing. So maybe we have a student that's using a real photograph and we want to use this to show them drink. Well, if I put a drink in front of them, maybe they don't understand it's the same thing because maybe they've cued in on the straw. Maybe in the photograph, because they see the straw, they think that every single drink has to have a straw for it to be the drink that they want, for that to represent that. The same thing can happen with like photographs of people. They're great to use, but sometimes students will cue in on a very small feature of the person and think that that's what's representing the person. So they may not recognize me one day because maybe I have earrings on and I don't, or maybe because I'm wearing a red shirt instead of a blue shirt that I was in the photograph. So you still have to learn, what does that represent? There's also line-drawn images. So as you can see, I've got 2 different ones here with juice boxes. One's black and white, which saves you a lot on ink. One's got some color. These line-drawn images are great because they can help with generalization skills, because it doesn't matter if I'm going to give you a juice box of apple juice or orange juice, and it doesn't have to be a particular brand. This line drawn is vague enough to represent lots of things. And finally, the most restrictive type of picture symbols is words. Once an individual can use words, then we don't necessarily have to use pictures. Well, the trick too is knowing that pictures also will help speed up and facilitate the communication. So just because I can read a word doesn't mean that that's the fastest way for me to pick my choice. For example, if you've ever gone through the drive-thru at a fast food restaurant, why are there pictures on the board? Well, because it's easier for us to visually process and make a choice from pictures than it would be in words when we're driving or going through a drive-thru. So that's just one of the things. Remember, just because a student can read a word doesn't mean that that's the best type of picture or representation to use. You really have to know the individual student. Now, that's the nice beauty of the picture symbols. We can pick the type of picture that most meets the needs of our students. So we want to think about, can they understand that when I hand them this picture symbol that it represents something? And that's something we take for granted sometimes when we're introducing picture symbols. We just assume that the student knows that this picture symbol represents what they want. They have to learn the association, and you can do that by quickly, when they use a picture symbol, quickly reinforcing it. So they hand you a picture symbol of juice, you quickly give them their juice so that they know that that's what they've requested, if that makes sense. So there is a wide type of pictures, and you really want to think about, well, what is it that my student needs and what will they comprehend? But also, yes, I'm going to have to work to teach them how to utilize those picture symbols. And then once you've decided what type of pictures, you really have to think about, well, what is the purpose of the picture symbols? Because there's lots of reasons to use picture symbols. So there's choice making and communication, schedule, literacy, academic, and even social stories can all incorporate picture symbols. So let's explore a few examples of the purposes of pictures. Here I have a picture board of 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed. Now if you were in person with me, you would notice that this has the little green and the pink monkeys Velcro off and on the bed, and then I have the 1 and 2 on the bottom that also Velcro off and on. So I can use this for choice making, because when we're singing 5 little monkeys on jumping on the bed, the student could choose which monkey to pull off the bed. And then they would also choose to pull off the number 2, hopefully. So I've kind of even incorporated some academics because we're doing some reverse counting. But there's a choice. Does it matter if they pick the pink or green monkey? Not at all. So I'm giving them a free choice. Let me show you an example of using picture symbols when it's not a choice. Are you ready for this? How about this? I'm going to give you 2 picture cards. One has Snickers and one has broccoli. And I want you to choose which one do you want. Is there really a choice? No. We have to be cautious because sometimes when we give students choices, we'll give them a choice that we know they like and a choice that we know that they don't like. Unfortunately, we're not really letting them choose. We're kind of asking them to pick the right one. Because we know if I picked broccoli over Snickers, there's something not right with me because everyone loves a Snickers bar, not broccoli. So we want to make sure we're giving them good choices. Now, if you gave me a choice between Snickers and M&Ms, I'm really going to have to think about it and say, which one do I want? Now, if I was turning this around and trying to assess a student's language skills, I may ask them, which is a vegetable? Now, that's not choice making. That's more geared towards an academic or a language skill where I'm trying to assess their vocabulary. So that's not really choice making. That's more of finding the correct answer, if that makes sense. We want to make sure when we're doing purpose of pictures, we're clearly defined and using them the way we intended to. Picture symbols are also great for communication. As you can see, I've got some core words that I could use for communication, words like roll or on, blow, push, off, or pop. I choose these vocabulary words because they let me have a lot of uses. So for example, if I was doing blocks, I could push blocks, I could blow the blocks, I could stack the blocks on top of each other. I'm not necessarily going to pop blocks, but if I was doing bubbles, I would use lots of these words, right? Because you blow bubbles, you may pop the bubbles. So those are some examples of core words for communication. And here's some more picture symbols for communication. Let's say I am working with a younger child and we're doing some pretend play with the baby doll. Here they can communicate with me what they want actions they would like to do with the baby to direct the play. So maybe they would pick to wash the baby. Maybe they pick to feed the baby or change the baby. So they're really communicating to direct the play or to tell us what to do with the toys. So that would be an example of using picture symbols to communicate. Another purpose of using pictures is for a schedule. I live and die by first thin, and I'll show you in a few minutes what I do with my first thin to make boxes and storage. But this is an example of a schedule because the student first gets to do Play-Doh, then it will be snack time. So I'm providing them the 2 activities they're going to be doing. Once they complete at Play-Doh, that would go into a finished section, and then would move over to first. So snack would become first, and I would put the next activity. So this is designed for a student that maybe can only handle 2 activities at a time. If I gave them 3 or more, they might become overwhelmed. So very simple, especially for your beginners that are learning to use picture symbols as a way to as a way to control their environment and to really schedule their day. All right, here's another example of using pictures for a schedule. As you can see now, I've got all 10 activities of the day, from beginning with the backpack all the way to go home. Now this can be overwhelming for a young child, but also some children like that consistency to know what their full day looks like. With picture symbols, as with any kind of assistive technology, it's really about the student and what the individual person needs and how are we going to meet their needs. So it's important that you know how much a child can handle or a student can handle with the picture symbols even within their schedule, whether they need 1 or 2 things or if they need a lot of things. Here's an example of using picture symbols for literacy. Maybe you are familiar, you've heard of Symbol Writer that used to come from Boardmaker, and now they use Symbolate, where you actually just type in words and they add picture symbols, or maybe a Rebus type of book. These are great for students that are struggling reading but can recognize picture symbols. So here we have a simple story about Grandma's spectacles, Grandma's hats, and as you can see I have the different picture symbols. I don't have a picture symbol for my sight words or my just those words that don't have a visual representation. Although Boardmaker and some other programs will put in a symbol, they don't have a lot of meaning unless you teach it. So that's why I like to go ahead and edit and only put the keywords when I'm using this. Now then, to measure comprehension, I could turn around and ask whose spectacles were them, and then provide them a picture of Grandma and a picture of Grandpa. Now that's not choice making because I'm really assessing them because I want to know did they understand what they read when they were doing their literacy activity. So here's another example of an academic, perhaps, lesson. If you're trying to teach someone which animal likes bones, instead of if they couldn't read, because they see a picture of a bone, they would know and then perhaps connect a line to the dog, because we know dogs and bones go together. So even if you have a student that's not a reader, they can still complete their academic assignments with picture symbols as supports. And finally, another way to use pictures, the purpose of pictures is perhaps through a social story. If you've never visited the Center on Social Emotional Foundations for Early Learning out of Vanderbilt, it is a wonderful resource for social stories and behavior. This is one of my favorite. It's about Tuck or Turtle takes time to tuck and think. And all of their picture symbols are downloaded as PowerPoint. So if you have PowerPoint or access to something like Google Drive that will let you download PowerPoints, it's an easy way to utilize this tool. And it walks you through about Tuck or Turtle. He's in school, and sometimes he gets really mad. And this is what happens when he gets mad. He wants to hit or yell. And then it gives you a strategy to compensate for that. So when he gets mad, he needs to think like a turtle. And he can stop and keep his hands, body, and yelling to himself. He can tuck and take 3 deep breaths to calm down. He can think of a solution. And then you can see Tucker's friends are happy. And that's the end. And then what's nice about this particular social story, it kind of summarizes and provides some teacher instruction about teaching the strategy to students. It has all the different picture symbols. This is great for students to struggle with verbal communication, and they need those visual supports to understand. As well as sometimes when students like with autism, that when they get upset, their verbal language and verbal comprehension decline, and they really just need those visuals to support them to keep them on track so they understand what they're thinking. All right, we're going to just pause a minute and see if there's any questions. So we just briefly have talked about the different types of pictures and some purposes of using pictures. Are there any questions? Right. Someone's asked me the difference between picture symbols and PECs. If you'll notice throughout this presentation, I've said picture symbols. Picture symbols just mean pictures. When we talk about and use the word PECs, that's referred to a specific picture exchange communication system. I am not PECs trained. We do have a speech therapist at UCP that is PECs trained. It's a great system. It's very structured and very well organized, and it's designed to help individuals with communication as well as with choice making. But PECs and picture symbols are very different. So I want to encourage you to be very cautious if you are working with students and when you're writing reports or when you're providing some IEP goals or even talking about accommodations that you're providing in the IEP. You want to make sure you don't say PECs unless you truly are using the picture exchange system, because it's very detailed and it's a very much a process. And you should not say that you're using PECs unless you've been trained in it. But yeah, picture symbols are something that everyone can use. I use picture symbols for students that have been identified as having delays such as language or autism or intellectual disabilities, but I also use picture symbols for typical students. They're just a great visual support and can help them, as well as it benefits them to have interactions with it. Are there any other questions? Just feel free, like I said, to either raise your hand or to ask a question in the question section, and I'll be happy to try to address that if possible. Thanks for the couple questions that came in. All right, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about organization of pictures. This is really important because you have to be able to utilize those picture symbols, whether it's for communication or choice making, because they're organized. One of the ways you may want to organize them is by categories. So you may have things such as your foods or your activities like fun activities or school-based activities. So you kind of organize them in by categories. You may also want to organize them in parts of speech. So as you kind of can see on my screen here, I have these color-coded, and this is actually a system, a color-coding system that you can get online. I'll be happy to share that link if you would like some information. But I have my parts of speech color-coded. So here you see I have my nouns, such as girl, boy, and cat, which is usually how we start a sentence. And then I have my verbs, ran, jump, sleep, and then I have my adjectives and adverbs to describe things such as fast, slow, and big. Now, because I've organized this in parts of speech, I can make a sentence. Girl, jump, fast. Yes, I'm missing a few words, but it really does help develop literacy skills by organizing it within parts of speech. You'll see many of the new dedicated devices, such as the PRC's MinSpeak in the Essence, or in your SonoFlex app or your Proloco app, uses color coding and will put things in order from left to right based on sentence structure. Yes, one quick question before we can continue. Somebody asked if those social stories are from Vanderbilt site are available to print. Yes, they are free to download. They have several on behavior and several other great behavior techniques. There's no fee for them, and they're PowerPoint based, so you don't have to have a special software. But that's a great question. It is linked on your handout on the last page, and I'll make sure to link it on the bottom of this website of STAR Training. So when I organize speech, I can do it by parts of speech. I can also do it situational, and I'm going to show you that as an example in just a moment based on if I'm at church, I may have a group of picture symbols, or if I'm at school, I may have a group of picture symbols. And finally, another way to organize them is by pragmatic branch starters. Linda Burkhart has a lot of information on her website about this. These are things like, instead of organizing it by categories like body parts or objects or feelings, you organize them with like the sentence starter. So something like, I want, and then the page of symbols would be things that you would want. So I may start off with I want, and then have things like a Snickers bar, a break, a toy. So those are the things I may want. And then another branch starter may be I feel, and then I may have things such as happy, sad, tired, hungry, thirsty. And then I may have another branch starter that says, I want to ask you a question, and then I would have things like who, or what, or when, because those are really important for a student to be able to communicate. Because think about it, if you want to know when is the field trip, you could ask, I want to ask you a question, and then say when, and then you may go to a different pragmatic branch starter about going somewhere, and maybe it would have field trip under where you're going. So those are really great. It's a great way if you're using it for someone that is relying for picture symbols for communication. Maybe they have a more physical impairment and you're kind of doing auditory scanning and let them make choices. So it's a really great thing to try. And like I said, Linda Burkhart has some great ideas of branch starters, and you can find those online. And here's a couple more examples I just want to share with you. Here's an example of a situational organization. As you can see, it's a little blurry, but these are all vocabulary picture symbols you might use at Play-Doh. I love this one. This is actually linked on your handout as well. It is from the Miami-Dade School, and on your handout it's listed as prekdadeschools.net. But you can get these free, but you do have to have WordMaker. But they have these great picture symbols based on situation. So let's say you were in a pre-K kindergarten classroom and you had centers. At your Play-Doh center, you could print this out, laminate it, and post this for all students to be able to use, so they know vocabulary and words to use during Play-Doh. What's neat about when you're doing situational vocabulary like this, you'll see verbal students that don't have delays utilize this tool as well, because they'll start forming sentences like things like roll or let me squish it, and it kind of prompts them on things they could do with the Play-Doh. Fun things to do too is you can post a menu in your Play Kitchen at school, and that provides picture symbols for the student to order food from the kitchen or to find food in the kitchen. So it's just a really great, easy thing to use. But again, it's not necessarily appropriate always to have situational vocabulary, because I may want to tell you roll when we're talking about outside because I want to roll in the grass. But if roll is only available to me when I'm playing with Play-Doh, it doesn't do me good. So it's important not to just use situational vocabulary, but also have other opportunities to use that vocabulary in other situations to help generalize those skills. All right. Now, after we talked about the organization of pictures, one of the things also to consider is the physical aspects of pictures. I get this asked a lot of times. Is there a great size for pictures? 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 2 by 3, 4 by 5? Well, really the size just depends on the student again. I've had a 4-year-old with some fine motor issues. He had Angelman syndrome, but he did receive OT services because he had some fine motor concerns. But he did a beautiful job on a half-inch picture that I was using with a literature book. That kind of surprised me, but that really let me know that, okay, this works for that student. Another thing is the shape. I personally prefer rectangles that are rounded on the edges, but there's no standard shape. There's no research that shows this shape works best. So if you like circles or if you like squares, it doesn't matter. As far as appearance, one of the things that we have found is that sometimes students with visual impairments, if you're using cheap lamination, there will sometimes be a glare on it. You can spend a little bit more money on lamination to get the non-glare kind that are very matte finish. They're not shiny, and that can help a student. As far as if they also have a visual impairment, you may find it's easier to do a black and white picture and not have so many details and print that on a high contrast color piece of paper. So for example, if you was trying to give them a picture symbol of hot, I may print that on a piece of red paper as a visual cue to help them understand it. Now, if you're working also with a student with a more visual impairment, not necessarily cortical vision impairment, but more of one where they actually need textures, you could definitely add textures to picture symbols. Once you laminate them, you could hot glue things such as ribbons or beads or pearls, Velcro dots, something to give it a little bit of texture. You could add Braille labeling, even if they don't begin to know Braille, you could just give them the opportunity to be introduced to it and to explore it. That's why I encourage, you'll see when we talk about picture symbols, I encourage to always put the words on it. It doesn't matter that the student can't read the words. If we never give them the opportunity to see them, they're not going to ever learn to read. So always put the picture words on it. It doesn't matter if you put the words on the top or the bottom of the picture. There's no research again about that. Sometimes it's a little easier if you do put it on the top, because then you can cover up the bottom of the picture with your finger and see if they can read the word and then show it, but it really doesn't matter. Now when we talk about how your picture is going to be stored and displayed and transported, this is really important. I have seen a lot of teachers and therapists abandon using picture symbols because they're just too complicated. The same thing with parents. You know, that's the beauty of an iPhone now or a smartphone. We can tell the parent, well, you know what, just take pictures and then present the phone to the child and they can flip through the pictures to find the one they wanted. It's great because they're right there and handy. But then again, there's also Angry Birds and some other distracting games on the iPhone or the smartphone that they may want to try to play instead of using that. I did want to share with you one of the things that we've found is we've created our Pinterest boards. Give me 1 second. I'm going to switch over to my Pinterest board. And I wanted to show you that we've posted several different ideas of displaying picture symbols. So here's our Pinterest board. It's off of UCP Huntsville, and then we have a board called Picture Symbols. So here's some great ways to display and organize your picture symbols. Here's the first thin one I was telling you about that you saw briefly earlier. I use just a little pencil box. I've actually got a dozen of them in my office because they were 10 cents to a quarter at the school closeout things. But what's nice is about the picture symbols you can see here in the second picture is that you can store all your picture symbols in that pencil box, slide them in and out, and then the first then would accommodate actually 2 pictures on first if the student was able to handle that, and then you have your then picture symbol. PVC pipe. It can make great eye gaze frames if you're working with someone that has very limited motor control but needs to be able to gaze to picture symbol choices. That would be a great option. I'm all the time looking for fun ways to display it. This is just an example of a bag that was designed for photographs, but instead of photographs I put picture symbols. There's certain fabrics that do better to organize your picture symbols. This is a notebook, and we've glued a piece of headliner from a car, and it's a little bit easier than felt. It doesn't pull as much, but it easily holds pictures. Magnets. This is just a stove cover, but you could use a cookie sheet for the same thing, and you can display your pictures, keep them all organized. ShamWow is another thing to use picture symbols. We have a paddle, clipboards, photo albums. So there's lots of different ways, and all of these are online. You can click on them and see them through our Pinterest boards. Plus you'll find lots of other ones as you begin to, if you utilize Pinterest to find ways to do picture symbols. Because I try to encourage people too that are using picture symbols, the easier it is to use them, the more likely you are to use them. And if you're having trouble because you can't find the symbol and the child's having a meltdown, or you lose picture symbols, then you're not doing it right. We need to find a better way to help you get organized. And there's so many great, easy solutions. I'm constantly looking at the Dollar Tree or in like clearance school supply sections, even the Target dollar section nowadays. There's lots of great ways you can use to organize your picture symbols to keep them handy and to really make them effective for whatever purpose you're using, whether it's choice making or communication or even academics. Are there any questions? Okay, I see a couple questions about Velcro. First, yes, we use Velcro a lot, and the trick when we use our Velcro, we try to use a standard. We always put the hard on card or the rough on stuff. So if I have a picture symbol, I'm going to put the hard or the rough or Velcro on that picture symbol, and then that'll let me easily attach it to something that has the soft Velcro on it, or to a fabric such as like even the car wash glove or a placemat, or the car liner felt, or even something carpety. It'll let you stick to it. So we always do hard on card and then the soft on the boards or whatever we're doing that we want to connect the card to, if that makes sense. I do have a vendor actually that we use from Finer. They're one of the ones we use that have cheaper Velcro. You can get it by the rolls, and you can get Velcro dots, and in different sizes. I always get the peel and stick. That just makes our life easier. And then the second question about the Velcro is, what about students that stim on the Velcro? That is a very common problem. You have students that will sit there and pull the picture off and on just to hear the staticky noise. One of the ways to prevent that is you could use something like magnets. And when I do the magnets, if you go to like a school supply store or an office supply store, you can actually find magnetic Scotch tape, kind of. It looks like Scotch tape, but it's magnetic. It makes it real easy to put the pictures, put magnets on the pictures. You can also buy business card labels where you peel and stick a business card to a magnet, and those work well for the picture symbols. You can usually get 2 or 4 picture symbols out of that one magnet. I have known people that recycle the magnets that come on the front of the phone book or in ads, and they'll cut them up and glue them on the back of it. Another option, if you don't want to do magnets, you can also do paper clips. If you'll notice, and I have slots that don't even have Velcros if you're doing a flip chart, but if you'll notice this calendar here, and I'll make it a little bit bigger for you, this calendar here doesn't have any Velcro. It just has a paper clip coming from the back, and that way I can just slide a picture in and out, or I can flip it over quickly. So that's another way to get around the Velcro, because we do have students sometimes that just enjoy that sound, and it doesn't bother me, but for some teachers and for some therapists I know that it's a problem. Okay, I see one more question. Let me pull it up here. Give me 1 second. Oh, it looks like I already answered that one. Okay. All right. So now we've talked about different types of pictures. Let's briefly talk about the communicator and the facilitator, because I know you're all anxious to find out about how to make picture symbols, maybe without using an expensive software. As far as when you're using picture symbols, it's important that the communicator knows what their role is. You know what are their abilities. So can the student pick up a picture? Can they hand it to somebody? If it's a child with autism, most likely they can pick and hold and pass over a picture. But if it's a child with cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy, they may not be able to physically handle the picture, so they'll need to be able to look at it. You also want to make sure it's least restrictive, meaning is it sufficient for them, or am I making it too easy for them? So maybe even someone with cerebral palsy, instead of just looking at the picture symbols, maybe they can move it, so we're being too restrictive by just having them look at them. The communicator also needs to know what do they need to be able to do with the pictures. So maybe if you're doing that situational picture, such as the Play-Doh one, you don't cut those out. You may have them just point to the picture, but they would need to know that they need to point to the picture instead of handing it to the person. You also need to think about how many pictures. So if you're making choices, can the student choose between 2 pictures, or can they choose between 4 or 6 or 8 or 20 pictures even? As they use picture symbols more, the better they'll get at that, of course. But you also just need to know your communicator and what they're using the picture symbols for. We talked a little bit about what they'll do with the pictures. Will they hand it to you? If they're using it as a schedule, is there a clear marked finish box that they're going to move it into? And how will they use these pictures to build independence? That really is the goal. If we're using the pictures either for communication or for choice making or even for their schedule, how is it building their independence? If it's constantly needing prompting, somebody pointing to which picture to hand them, then we're not really meeting their needs. And finally, what goals can be identified and measured? That's really important. Are we trying to get them to make choices? Are we trying them to communicate, to state their preferences? So you kind of have to know that goal with using the picture symbols. Equally important is the listener and facilitator. Now, it's pretty simple if the listener and facilitator is the speech therapist or a classroom teacher or even a parent. But what if the student is out in the community and they have a new Sunday school teacher? or if they're at McDonald's and they're trying to order. Is it intuitive? Does the listener and facilitator already know what's expected of them? So if you're at McDonald's and you hand a picture of French fries, most likely the cashier is going to understand that you want French fries. But now if you're handing them a picture of a potato, they may not understand that that's representation of French fries. So that's really important. Can a non-familiar communication partner successfully communicate? And again, is it practical? And that's what we're running a lot of times with families, is as much as we know as professionals that picture symbols are great and can be very helpful, they're just not practical for a family. I find the pencil boxes are really practical because they will fit in someone's purse, not a big deal. But a lot of families are choosing to use tablets or iPhones, and that's another training that STAR will be offering about using apps and things for picture symbols, but that's just a different option for families, and sometimes it can be more practical. All right, let's jump into some fun stuff. Let's talk a little bit now about making picture symbols. Are there any questions before I do that? Okay, I think I've got all the questions. Again, if I haven't answered your question, just make sure you ask it again. Towards the end of the session, we'll have a little more time. So when we're talking about making pictures, most people are familiar with BoardMaker. It is one of the industry standards as far as creating picture symbols. It's a very easy program. I'm not going to pull it up, but the problem with BoardMaker is it's not free. And so that can become a problem for families. They may not be able to afford using the software. They've changed. It used to be a software program you purchase. Most people now get a subscription service to BoardMaker, and they pay an annual fee to utilize picture symbols from BoardMaker. It's a very easy program to use. You just draw your squares, and then you type it in. They've got a great library of picture symbols. These picture symbols are pretty universal as well. You'll see them in a lot of different variety of classrooms, as well as some of the communication devices like Dynavox. So as you see, I've got a simple animal picture board. Now this would not necessarily be used for communication. This would probably be used for an activity where we're talking about animals, or if I want the child to communicate to me which animal he wants to pretend to be. So maybe they would point to an alligator, and we would pretend an alligator and do the chomp. Or maybe I would be making animal noises and ask the child, which animal am I? But that's different than choice making. If I ask them which animal am I and I'm pretending to be an animal, that's making them make a choice, and there's a right and a wrong answer, versus which animal do you want to pretend to be like. That's really giving them a choice. I'm not really measuring their comprehension. I want to see if I'll make a choice. Remember, these are 9 picture symbols, so this child would have a pretty good option of using a vocabulary. Now, if you'll see here, I've made the same 9 picture symbols, but I've used PowerPoint. PowerPoint is a great program. Most people already have access to it, and it's really simple, really easy to create picture symbols using PowerPoint. Let me just take a break and show you how to do that. So I'm just going to open up a new PowerPoint, and the first thing I'm going to do is change the layout, because with picture symbols we want to have the words in a picture. So up here at top it gives me a layout, and I could do title and content, but I'm actually just going to do title. That kind of lets me cheat. And let's say instead of animals we're going to talk about sports. So I'm going to start with football, and I'm going to put my picture in just a minute, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a new slide, and my next one is going to be soccer, and the next one is going to be, I'm going to do a new slide, we're going to do baseball. So I would just keep going with the different sports. So now if I needed a picture, I could just insert from the photo album or from clip art or for a picture. Those are my Windows options. So if I can go into clip art, there may or may not be a picture I like. So we can just search for football. So here's some different pictures of football. None of these are really, I was just kind of picturing just a plain old football. Well, see, that one sort of is good. So I'll put a football there. So I could use pictures that I already have on my computer through Microsoft Clip Art. If I saved pictures, had them on my camera or USB, I could pull them up right there. But another thing I also like to use is I like to use Google. So I'm going to show you now. I'm just going to go into my web page, and I'm just going to go to google.com. And on google.com, you have the option here to search images. Hopefully you already know that. And now I'm going to search for soccer ball or soccer. Let's go ahead and put soccer ball. Now, there's lots and lots of soccer balls to choose from, but maybe you've never explored these search tools. Love using these search tools because now we can change the size, which I don't really worry about. Maybe instead of full color, maybe I just want to do black and white. Maybe I'm working with a student that needs high contrast. Now, it's a little obvious with black and white for a soccer ball, but we'll go with black and white anyway. As you can see, all my color pictures are now gone. And then you have the option for a type. Remember earlier when we talked about different types of picture symbols, photographs versus line drawn? Well, here in type you can change it. So I can do a photo. So here's photos of soccer balls. But maybe instead of a photo, I want to use a clip art to encourage generalization skills. So here's clip art. And then I could even do a line drawing. So there's a difference between each one, but I love using the search tools within Google's to find which one I'm looking for. Now, I'm not really liking the line drawn ones. You'd see line drawn if I was talking about a sad person. You see there you really get different line drawns. And then if I swapped over to clip art, and remember I still have it all in black and white, I could change this now to full color or any color. We'll do any color. And then I could change it now into a photo. And I can even narrow it down to face. So really utilize those search tools within Google Images to find exactly which picture you're looking for. So I'm going to just go real fast back to soccer. And I want the ball. Sometimes I'll use keywords like that to narrow it down. I don't need the face, I want to do a clip art. Sometimes you can just copy paste right, like say I want this picture right here. I could just copy paste it, right click or do Control C. And sometimes it's stubborn and won't do it and you have to actually click the picture and make it full size and then you can copy it. So I'm just going to copy the image and I come over here to my picture symbols and I'll paste my soccer ball right there and I'll just put it in the middle of the page. Maybe I want my fonts bigger throughout the whole thing. I could easily adjust that here, make my title a little bigger. If you want the font on the bottom, you can do that too within PowerPoint. But here's the trick. When I use PowerPoint to do my picture symbols, when I print it, that's where the magic comes from. Because instead of, if I was doing a full classroom schedule or a full choice board or a word wall, I may want a bigger picture, like an 8.5 by 11. But maybe I want this as an individual's picture symbols. So instead of printing the full slide, I'm going to actually print as a handout. Now I can print 4 to a slide, to a page, or I can print 9 to a page and makes them a little bit smaller. Anything from 6 to 9 is actually a really good size for an individual's communication board or an individual's schedule. I also will cheat sometimes. Instead of doing it this way, I'll actually do full page and then go into my printer properties and then change it. Instead of, not all printers will do this, but instead of doing 1 page per sheet, I will change it here to 6 or 9 pages per sheet. And it just makes it a little bit different when you print it. You won't see it here, but if I was to print it, you would see, and I'm actually will print it for you, but you would see it would come up as boards. But stick it simple. Instead of doing full pages per slide, just do a handout. That's the easier way to do it. Very simple and easy to do. The reason I advocate for tools such as Microsoft PowerPoint is, first, you don't have to have internet. So if you're working with a family and you're encouraging them to use picture symbols, you don't want them relying on you to make all the picture symbols. You want them to take the initiative to be able to create their own picture symbols. They could go to the public library, use the printers there and make them. If they have a computer at home but no internet, they still could use a free tool like PowerPoint. Because PowerPoint is free, or if you have internet access and you don't have PowerPoint, you could always use Google Drive's version of PowerPoint or presentation software and make it. So it really is a great option to create picture symbols. And you saw it was pretty simple. I am a fluent BoardMaker user, so I'm not quite as, I'm faster with BoardMaker, but for a lot of people this can be faster than BoardMaker if you're just not using BoardMaker a whole lot. And again, BoardMaker is a great software, it's just not free, so it can become a barrier for families if they don't have access to it. Now let's just take the last few minutes to look at some software and some websites that you can do online. Now these are free, the ones I'm going to show you, and they're in your handout, as well as sometimes they change, so make sure you check the link, and the link is broken, please contact us and let us know. But these are great options, but you do have to have internet access, and not all your families are going to have internet access. So you want to make sure that if you're asking them or giving them ways to make picture symbols, that they have those tools available. All right. Somebody asked a question again about the printing with the different slides per page. That really is dependent on your printer. Not all printers will give you that option when you go under Advanced to change your page layout to multiple pictures on a page. So really I try to encourage people just to stick to the print 6 slides per page instead of 1 slide per page. That's kind of the easier way to do it. Can you print black and white on PowerPoint? Absolutely. You know, if you did your pages in color, you could still always choose the option to print in grayscale. I find that using the black and white pictures from the start when you do your Google image searches is going to give you clearer lines, because sometimes even with the grayscale the pictures are so detailed it doesn't come out that clear. So if you think you're going to use picture symbols that are black and white because you're looking for that high contrast, then also do it. Now if you were doing the color coding when we talked about earlier, organizing your picture symbols and language structure, you could also still add the background to the PowerPoint. So if we think about our color coding, and I'll go back here to our picture symbols, we know soccer, when we talk about soccer ball, that is an object. So the objects are supposed to be yellow, or it's a noun. So I would just change my color of my slide background by just right-clicking. And you've got Format Background. And I can just fill color and make it yellow. So that's an easy way too, even to do your color coding with your parts of speech within PowerPoint. Because you could do the same thing in BoardMaker as well. Some of the ones online you're going to see we don't have as much control. But I love free options, and that's the beauty now about assistive technology. Picture symbols and communication devices and apps, there's so many choices, you really can consider the individual's needs. This resource I just came across a couple weeks ago. I primarily use Google Chrome as my browser. I am using a Windows-based computer, so you don't have to have a Chromebook to use this tool. But if you go into your Google Chrome store, it's just like your Apple store, you can download this program called Picto for Me. That's P-I-C-T-O, the number 4, and then me, M-E. And it's a free communication board software. And it's really neat because here's got my board right here. And I'm just going to show you briefly how to use it. I can rename it. So we're going to let's do some animals. How many columns, how many rows, so that's going to affect your picture sizes. So I'm going to make mine pretty big. So we're going to do 2 rows by 2 columns, and I'm going to make my size bigger. And then it says PDF size, and it kind of tells you the size, which helps. And now I'm going to put in an animal. So let's start with cat. And I just type it in, and there's the picture of a cat. I pick which one I like. Oops, and I accidentally clicked it twice. That's okay. So I'm going to fix this one now. Instead of this one, the cat, I'm just going to delete this button. I'm just going to double click it now, and now I'm going to put here, put horse. Now if you don't like the pictures that come up when you search, you can copy paste pictures over from the internet, or from you can upload them from your thumb drive or your computer. So it automatically puts the pictures and the words in there. Now what's nice about this free program, it also can be used on a computer as a communication device. Before I do that, let me show you the borders. We can change our borders. Right now my borders are black, but maybe I want blue borders. And I can make them thinner or thicker right here. So the website for Picto4Me has some great tutorials how to do it. When I started playing with it, I was a little confused, so I just went to their website and found out some different information. So once you have it done, you can save it, and you can share these, you can print them, you can download them, which is great. And then you can also go into play mode once you're ready to use it. And before I do that, I want to show you that I can add speech. So when I double click the picture, see there's a speech button, and it'll say the word cat, and you would be able to hear it. My sound is muted, you won't be able to hear it. But when I went into Playboard, and if I was using this as a communication device or app, then once you do it, you would be able to touch it using a mouse, a head pointer, a head camera mouse, or they have switch scanning as an option as well. I can save my board as well. And then you can play the board. Right here's the play option. And now if you click the item, it would say it aloud. And then here's your switch scanning right up here. You can increase or decrease. If you hit play, it starts switch scanning, and you can make your choice, and it also provides auto toy scanning. So it's a really awesome free program. Like I said, completely free. You could just go to Google Chrome store, and then you can download it, Picto4Me. So I love it because it's interactive and has scanning, very accessible if a student can access the computer either through a touch screen, through a alternative mouse or joystick, trackball. So it's great options there. Now another favorite site of mine is sendteacher.org. And I do recommend this a lot to parents because it's very easy to use. Be careful, there are lots of ads. If you'll notice right here, this is all an ad board. It's very tempting to accidentally click that. You don't want to do that. When you get to sendteacher.org, what you're looking for is you want to go to print, and then you'd want to select visual aids and AAC. And now you're going to get several options of how you want to create AAC. You can do quick AAC photo cards, you can do symbol cards, you can do these symbol fans. I've not made one of those, but you just would cut them out, and if you're kind of working on choice making and things, those are great. I love the dodeca dice or the symbol cubes. They have monsters on it, but I use these sometimes for feelings or for activities like run, jump, throw. It gives the kid an option to do it, or if you're doing animals, you can roll it and they can pick which animal you want to sound like. And they even have these great message cards. Remember earlier when we talked about what the facilitator is supposed to be able to do with the card? If you made the message card, the facilitator would read the back to understand what it means. So I'm just going to briefly show you how easy it is to make a symbol card. And I'm just going to do symbol cards right here. You click on it. And remember, try to avoid the ad right here. It's tempting to click those, but that's going to take you to other websites, and you don't need that. So here's my symbols, and so if I want to change that one, I just click it. And so instead of hello, maybe I'm going to do feelings, so I'm going to start with sad, and then I'm just going to do a symbol search. Sad. So there's a symbol, and I click OK. And then I want to add a new card. This is not adding a new page, this is adding a new square. And maybe this one's going to do mad, and I'm going to symbol search. This one's a little bit hard to represent. As you can see, they have some pictures of what appears to be a cow. That would be like mad cow disease, I believe. Maybe I'm going to try angry. There we go. I think this is a good picture of mad. Now I can still have the word mad even though I search for angry, which is great. You can add stars, you can add S's. We're going to click OK. And then I just keep adding a new card and keep filling it up to the full page. Now the card size right now, it's set to 6. 3 down, I can do 2. I could do even smaller. So just changing over here, you can change the font, make your font bigger, different sizes. So make it look like a funkier font. And you can change your border colors. So there's a lot of great options in this free program. Very simple, easy to do, and what they are doing is those were pulling clip art. If I had picked the photo cards, it would be pulling Google photo images, and you still have lots to choose from. So I'll show you what that looks like real fast too. And this is from sendteacher.org. It is a free resource. And I love recommending free things because we don't have to worry about saying and paying it, especially in IEP times. And we can really empower our families to make their own picture symbols. So look, they started transportation, so let's add a new card. Let's look for boat. And these are photographs. That was the picture card type we looked for. And I forgot to click search for an image. And just click next image. Next image. Earlier I did come across, when I was doing this for another activity, I did come across an inappropriate picture, so you do want to warn parents that there are pictures that may not be appropriate. It was inappropriate, not hideous, but just wanted to let you know they are using Google and there's not a lot of filters, so you may or may not. I'm not really like any of these boats. Maybe I'd be more specific and say rowboat. Nope. So if I'm going to use this one, just say OK. So if you want something just a tad easier than PowerPoint, this would give you some options, but again, you're kind of restricted because it's not pulling every single picture like you were doing with Google Images. But it's very simple, easy to do, and I'm always looking for simple and fast things to do. Now there are some examples of other picture symbol sites that do not require BoardMaker. This is Visual Aids for Learning, and they have free downloads. When you go up top, you just explore and they give you free things. That's what we're looking for. And here's an example of one that you can download. These are some class rules, such as sit down, use nice words, show teacher their work. And that's from Visual Aids for Learning. Picture set is another one that I like to use a lot. Here's some different picture symbols already created, not BoardMaker, so you don't have to have that program. So maybe we're looking at some vocabulary for the library, and here's some text-speak language vocabulary. That was a port choice. Usually there's more than that. So here's some social supports for a PE class, some visual aids for some rules. So we could look up, download this. Now this one's BoardMaker, or we could download it as a PDF. And then it would just download and you could open it and you have different picture symbols. Let's take a quick look and see if it'll open for us. Are there any questions as we start to wrap up? I just wanted to show you one or two more things. As far as BoardMaker sites, yes. On the handout I've provided some examples of like BoardMaker online in Baltimore City schools and pre-K schools. Those are some great websites that have BoardMaker files. You have to have access either to online BoardMaker or to the BoardMaker software. So you have to be cautious because, like I said, most families won't have access to that, and there's some teachers and speech therapists even that don't have access to that. So you want to be careful when you're using those. It's great if you have it, then you can quickly download those, and there's some great resources. That's why I provided those on the handout. But you do have to have BoardMaker. Some of the sites I've shown you today are free, and you don't have to have any special software. So here's an example from the SetBC site, and it has picture symbols that you can download for OT stations for PE. So there's some different things. So that's just another example. And one more thing I do want to show you is I'm going to show you the pre-K site for Diet schools because I think they're great. I'm just going to click on resources for teachers, and there's your BoardMaker downloads. Oops. They've updated their sites. So here's some different ones from PowerPoint downloads where they did similar things. And like I said, they do have, let me type in the website. They do have the BoardMaker, like I was showing you earlier with the center-based activities. Let's type it in. So there are the ones. So if you're talking with Halloween being right around the corner perhaps, you've got pumpkin carving, but here's those situational-based vocabulary, which I love doing if in the center in a classroom to really make a language-rich classroom with lots of different picture symbols. So that's pretty much wraps up about picture symbols. And we've kind of gone over quite a few things today as far as the types of picture symbols that you can use and the purpose of using picture symbols, the organization of picture symbols, the physical aspects of picture symbols, whether it really doesn't matter, making sure you know who the communicator is and what their skills are, as well as the learner and facilitator. And then we briefly talked about some different ways that you can create your own picture symbols, whether you're using BoardMaker, the software, and downloading great resources such as the one I'm currently showing you, or if you're looking at using PowerPoint and Google Images, very simple way to create picture symbols, or using other free websites that let you download picture symbols. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to ask them now, or you can always email me at tasc, T-A-S-C, at ucphuntsville.org. And if you were getting ASHA CEs, you will receive a follow-up email with some brief questions as well as the necessary information we have to report to ASHA. Once you exit the survey, the webinar, you will receive a survey. Please complete that, and that will help us with grant funding. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now of the webinar, but feel free to ask questions if you have any more. Thanks for joining us.